Greetings, it is I, Tentus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome! It is time to continue my discussion on Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, the second edition of AD&D. As we left off, we've been going through information in the Dungeon Master's Guide, help you be a DM a little bit more, and we were talking about special types of NPCs with henchmen. Let's finish up with henchmen and move on from there today. So for henchmen, it is important to note that you as the player that has control of this henchman, taking over and running this henchman, being the controller of it, the person that's role-playing them, is in fact a great factor and a great removal of a burden upon a dungeon master. They don't have to do anything for this character unless your player starts acting in a way that this NPC wouldn't, having it do something, or having it do something against its personality. Basically, if they are doing something, not role-playing the character, misusing it in some kind of way, you could easily step in and change the orders, choose a different action that seems more appropriate to the situation, things like that. Sometimes a player might do this in such a way that you will have to do this. Other times they might incidentally do that, not on purpose. They're probably not going to be misusing the NPC on purpose anyway. They might just be, well, lazy to a degree and not caring as much about this henchman. Effectively, your stepping in is when things are getting out of hand, and it could happen for a variety of reasons. You're trying to keep the NPC in line the way that it should be with how it was set up, as long as that person is role-playing it, of course. Dungeon Master can overrule anything. Now, also, you're going to have to look as the fact that your players are treating these henchmen appropriately. Remember, these are supposed to be your character's friends. And anything they would do in-game that would ruin a friendship in real life will ruin a friendship in the course of a game. So they could easily lose the henchman if they treat the henchman in any way that you wouldn't treat an actual friend. You have to act like a friend to keep a friend. It's also important to note that, as a rule, henchmen don't go on adventures if their character friend isn't in an adventure. They don't want to be involved. They have a specific friend that would be bringing them into this adventure, otherwise, why? Also, you have to look to the fact that a henchman will not take orders from a stranger unless the character friend that they have is also taking orders from this stranger. Then they might be willing to listen to what's going on and kind of obey this if the person that's basically, once again, dragging them into this situation actually is going along with it also. Now, a player will keep track of all the relevant statistics and information about this henchman. This is once again freeing up information and time management for the DM. The fact is, this is all the information that they have that isn't hidden. Most statistics that could change and alter, hit points, things like that, will be under the purview of your game, your player, so they can easily keep track of that. You as a DM don't have to worry anymore. You've basically set off a burden that you would normally have had. This does include tracking EXP, experience points, for a henchman. A henchman does gain experience as part of a battle, but half as much as a player would gain. They will advance in levels and things like that. And you, pretty much as the DM, are usually going to have to keep track of levels more than your players. It's more important for you because they technically still are an NPC. Now, it is also important to note that if a henchman is involved in some kind of venture, they're going to want their own share of the gold, the treasure, and any magic items that you receive they would be getting from it. Because they're getting their share of the risk along the way, they want their share of everything you're gaining for taking that risk. Share of the treasure. Now that we've talked about that, let's talk a little bit about titles and officials. The fact is, there are NPCs that you can meet out there that, no matter what you do, you couldn't hire them on. They are not willing to be paid money to do anything with you, to adventure with you, to help you out, period. A lot of times these NPCs don't necessarily function as enemies, or someone that you'd go against. They could easily be befriended by your characters. It's just because of their rank, their position within society, and their ability to even hire on NPCs of their own puts them in a position where they have no reason and they would never have a reason to be involved with the players beyond anything of maybe some friendship. A list of titles of various cultures and locations around the world and different sort of occupations, arranged from highest to lowest, are provided in the book so that you can look and figure out what kind of title your characters might have, depending on the type of region it is. This, again, is based upon, more ethnic regions and positional regions combined, and positions. Sort of the list of these two combined to give you an idea of a bunch of titles you could use. Now we're going to talk about something that's very difficult for both players and DMs. Spellcasting. Well, why am I saying spellcasting? Well, your players may reach a point in time where they require some kind of spell for whatever reason in their venture. And none of your players could either cast it, or know it, or even have the ability to cast it at this point in time. If they need this spell for whatever reason, they're going to need to find some kind of spellcaster to find it. And here is where the difficulty comes about, because it's up to you as the DM to determine how they're going to find this spellcaster, because there are some intrinsic problems with finding spellcasters and gaining the spells from them that they're going to have to overcome, and your players are going to have to go through this. The fact is, you could easily cut them off from these spells, especially if they feel they're needed and you feel it's not needed, but really you should figure out a way to make this work. So the first big hurdle is finding someone who can cast the spell, because more than likely, the person that's casting a spell is going to be more powerful than your players. This makes it more difficult because you're finding someone that's a rare needle in a haystack, more powerful than the PCs you have. The fact is that your average wizard-type spellcaster is not going to advertise their abilities. Most of them, in fact, hide away the fact that they're as powerful as they are because they don't want to invite trouble. There might be people coming to claim their head and prove they're the most powerful, or people that would hunt them down because they see them as a danger. Advertising their powerfulness can attract such trouble that they will not want to deal with it. So finding one of them, because if they're bragging, it's most likely because they're young and stupid and not knowing that there is too much danger to this. If they're not bragging, finding them, it's a trouble. Clerics and more divine spellcasters, on the other hand, priest types, they're easier to find. The fact is, you could always go to a temple or some kind of shrine, and more than likely you'll be able to track one of them down. They'll probably be doing some kind of service in the name of their deity. If they're as powerful as they are, or as devout as they are, they're more than likely going to be doing something to prove this level of devotion and to improve their church as a whole. Now, we though move on to the next difficulty in all of this, convincing the person that you've met to actually cast the spell for you. Because this person that you've met may not have the spell memorized, so they might have to prepare it, might not even have the spell, but have the ability to cast the spell, things like this, that there are difficulties intrinsically involved with it. If we're talking about that divine route with a cleric or priest, the fact is that because of their own religious and ethos, they might not want to cast for you. They might have a thing that they don't cast spells for non-believers, or people that they feel are blasphemous. You might be required to give some kind of donation to their church, some kind of service to them, or even convert, in order to convince them to cast a spell for you. When we turn to the arcane side, and in general though, spellcasting is financial. You're going to have to pay somewhere along the way. It often involves money. As I told you, for the clergy, you might be able to convince them without the donations, maybe for a service, maybe for a conversion. If it's certain types of spells, might be able to convince them. But if you've managed to drag that arcane spellcaster out of his hiding, where he wants to do his research or whatever he does, and trying to convince him, and you've convinced him just on general principle to cast this spell, he's probably going to want money for it. And the fact is, he's got you over the barrel. He's got you in a position where he can barter up the prices from just a general simple casting to whatever he really wants because he has control. Well, he or she, I should really say. The thing is that normally they're not going to charge you more than it would cost for a member of your party to possibly learn or gain the ability to cast that spell overall and do it themselves. So there is going to be more expenses than you would say, what you would think would be an average, but they're probably not going to charge you so much that it still isn't worth it for you to basically take their spellcasting. Spellcasting prices are generally listed in the book. These are general prices for casting certain spells. But that's it for today. I went over 3 important things. I first finished talking about henchmen, and the fact that it's a balance between what your players do and what you do, and your players using these henchmen, it's a lot easier for you when it comes to these NPCs in your group because you have less that you're doing. Then I talked about having titles, basically, being a noble, being an official, and what it really meant to, the fact that you can use these, and these are oftentimes more important NPCs that your characters can still befriend, but they're not going to be hiring them to do anything. These aren't hirelings, these aren't henchmen, they're not going to be traveling with your players. They can be friends, but they're just NPCs they will encounter to either drive the story or add to the essence of the story. Then I talked, of course, about hiring on a spellcaster to cast a spell for you, because this is another use of an NPC that can occur. Players might need a spell. They might have a friend who died that they're like, we need to resurrect this dude, you know, something like that. And then you're going to have to find someone that can resurrect him if one member of your party can't do it. And that's an adventure in and of itself, which I talked about, which will cost you too. Now, in the next episode, we're going to talk about magic items and your NPCs and your NPC personalities. Talking about when you're building your personalities for your NPCs, because both of these are important topics we're going to cover. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows support the channel, the empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon, a link in the description below. There's some great rewards there that helps to grow and improve the channel and the empire. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.